Hi there, this is Jeff from Room 4 Media, and I welcome you to the second episode of Hot Seat, where we interview startup founders, entrepreneurs, marketers about their strategies, marketing campaigns, etc. Before we start this interview, I would like to thank Spaces Bogota, which let us film this interview in their brand new co-working location, which is a cool one that you should check it out. With us today we have Alan Colmenares, who's an entrepreneur that has worked for several years in Silicon Valley. He has been featured on VentureBeat, CNN, the New York Times, and also he's a startup advisor, a mentor, CEO and founder of Swap. Hello Alan.
Hi Jeff, how's it going? Good.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. We are really looking forward for this interview to learn more from your experience and your knowledge. And the idea of this interview is to kind of talk about Bitcoin, FinTech, cryptocurrency, what's happening in this ecosystem at the moment.
Great. Well, it's a really exciting time, and there's a lot of froth also in the marketplace. So to me, what's happening is something where there's a very interesting innovation, just like the internet was a great innovation, that some people think is going to create the impact sooner rather than later. But these kind of really high level impact innovations usually take longer. So for the first time in history, this is my take on blockchain and Bitcoin, etc. For the first time in history, a problem has been solved that was never solved before. That problem is that you don't need a third party now for different kind of activities in our economic life, and sometimes in other parts of our life, like you don't need a third party to execute a transaction, you don't need a third party to do property rights, things like that. And that's all been solved through mathematics and software. That's a very revolutionary change. It's just that the rate of change, you can have a different perspective on that, but some people think it's going to take longer, some people think it's going to take shorter. If I want to talk about Bitcoin specifically, let's talk about Bitcoin. I like the fact that with Bitcoin, what you have is a real use case, a real problem that's being solved, a specific problem. That's problem, I believe, with a lot of experts, is store of value. So now you don't just have to store your value in gold or anything like that. You can also use Bitcoin to store your value. So to me, that use case is a big difference between other cryptos that maybe the use case isn't as clear. Yeah. So there's something very interesting with that, and all the price swings are basically where people get ahead of themselves, just like any other market, and it's not a foregone conclusion that Bitcoin's going to win, although I kind of think it will, but it's a very exciting technology.
Okay, you mentioned that there's a lot of fraud.
Yeah.
What kind of fraud are you referring to?
Two kinds.
Is it scams or?
Yeah, so there's two kinds. The first kind, let's start with that one. So. There's an opportunity to have investors that they don't really call them investors. They're buying something that they call a token for new cryptocurrencies. So the new thing is that anybody can invest, and you don't even have to have a lot of money. You invest $100 or less or more, etc. Where these crowdfunding sites had something similar, but nothing as open as the crypto space. Yeah. So when you have something that open, well, that invites the bad players, especially when there's an incredible opportunity like a gold rush. Yeah. And there's been people who have made lots of money, and there's been several cases, and probably going to be a lot more of scammers and people who really never were going to have a real project. Yeah. And the second thing was what I said before, which is kind of what happened with the internet bubble when that popped. So people get ahead of themselves, etc., and then a lot of people leave the space because they think, oh, there's nothing really there. And that's when the real innovation comes. And I think we could be at that point right now where people have been leaving the space, and now, but you keep seeing such amazing innovation.
Okay, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. One thing that you mentioned is about having a real product and a real project. Many startups focus a lot on getting their white papers done, on their roadmaps, but they don't really focus that much energy, right? Mm-hmm. Or not enough energy on actually getting a product out there.
Right.
Right. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, well, the first thing that they really need is to have a good idea. So I think and when I say a good idea, I mean like in the Clayton Christensen sense, who's that Harvard professor that says, you're really just solving a problem that customers have, a job to be done. Whereas I'm not saying a good idea, like I'm an engineer, where it's like the next shiny product and it looks amazing. It does amazing things, but nobody really knows how to use it. So the first thing to me is to have a really good idea. The second thing is to have a great team. And I think that really differentiates the projects. If there's a really good idea where there's hopefully validation on it and they have a great team, that goes a long way to being something real. So then you have, like, when you don't have that, there's the gamut. Like, there's people who never plan on having something real because they just see easy money, and there's other people who actually think that it's going to work and it doesn't. And that's where regulators are kind of looking at this space and saying, "Wow, the individual investor could be really burned on these things." So how to regulate that, which there's a lot of debate on whether it should be regulated or not.
Okay.
But that's my feeling is. First, they have to have a really solid idea and a solid team.
Okay, so let's say that you have a solid idea, a solid team, and you've got a product. Let's talk a bit about the marketing side of it, right? What are the main pillars for an effective marketing strategy in this space?
Okay, I'm going to say what I've seen because I haven't actually executed an ICO, but what I've seen is this space is much more transparent than other spaces in the following sense. People are really looking at the technology, the solution, the problem they're solving. They're really investigating it instead of just going, oh, this company has a brand, I'll just go for that product. No, they actually really look under the hood. Not everyone, because there's people who've gotten burned, but if you really have those two strong aspects, then you really have gone a long way. So what I see are two things. One is the tactical marketing strategy, and the other one is the strategic marketing strategy. So the strategic marketing strategy is basically having those first two components and then being consistent with that. So if I'm like Telegram, which I think is a great project, which is the encrypted chat project, or Binance, which is the exchange, I have a great project. What you need is people who can talk to the community and have the community really understand what you're doing. If they hear something that scares them, quickly talk to them. And there's tactical things there, which is get onto social media, etc. But it's much more about coherence in the company, that you're really being transparent with the company. If you don't have that, you can still be successful. It's just that you're just going to go for the easy money or the short-term money usually. So it's just a tactical play where you get great SEO and you have people interested even though you don't really have the team behind it. So you can be successful without having a real project, unfortunately. But the best success, obviously, that I think is the ones who actually have something concrete to offer the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree. And what about like content marketing? Once you get your product out there, right? You need to explain what it does, what the real problems what are the real problems that are being solved. What are your thoughts about content marketing, especially like for startups that are going out there launching their products?
So content marketing, from what I've seen, works because some of the startups that I advise have used it and to great effect. But what I see is a lot of companies, startups or otherwise, don't take advantage of the strategic part of content marketing. So there's a tactical part where you get great SEO, people can go to your site, learn things, etc. But if you don't take advantage of the fact that you have a chance to offer a new perspective on a problem, then you're not wasting it. You're missing a great opportunity. So it's not just, in my opinion, not just about getting content out there, getting good SEO results. It's combining that with actually having something to say. So if you have a very different take on how to do something, like let's say Telegram. Like Telegram, I haven't actually read what they've written, but they could write things such as encryption is so key for the future. There's a lot that they can bring to the table there. So if you have an interesting voice and perspective on the problem, you have such an opportunity. You could not do that and just talk about the product and things like that, but I don't think you're going to get the same bang that you get from actually thinking deeper about it.
Yeah, I think this goes around storytelling, right? Which is kind of the basis of any marketing campaign. Every marketing campaign should have, or every product and every brand should have a story to say. So I think, and I don't know if you agree with me, like although it's a very innovative products, technologies, etc., we still have to go back to basics, right, and make sure that we get the story right.
I agree 100% with you. So what I think is storytelling has always been, so we're humans, we love stories, so it's always been important. What we have now is the ability and the freedom to actually have a space to tell stories. It's just that a lot of people haven't gotten the message. A lot of startups, they say, so they don't invest in that. Hopefully, when we launch Swap, we'll have taken that to heart because we are working on that. So the key is that since you have that ability to do that, you might as well take advantage of it. But a lot of people have not been taking advantage of, which you and I were talking before this, and you guys work a lot on that.
Yeah. Tell me about Swap. Right?
Okay.
I'm interested to know. I did some basic research, but I'm interested to know like what is the real problem that you're solving and how you realize that there's a problem out there, right? And also maybe share with us like what you're planning. Like for launch and in the next coming months.
Okay, so I'm going to take a step back and say, I've always been interested in the FinTech space, and I worked at a bank. We bought a startup in that bank, and then what I've always liked really a lot is payments also. So that what can we do differently in payments? You look at China, Asia, they're doing total digital payments, whereas in the West it's still cards and it's mostly credit cards and things like that. So I had a friend of mine come to me and said, hey, Alan, what if we would do something, or no, he didn't say we, he actually said him. He was thinking of doing something where he would do like a corporate voucher where you can buy things with check, but doing all digital. And I love the idea. So I started talking with HR managers and sales managers and asking them, how would you feel about having a mobile app that employees download, and you can just pass money to them if they win a prize. Actually, it started off as being part of their salary going there. But then one of the HR managers said, why don't you start with prizes? It's simpler. So the typical like pivot, although it's a very minuscule pivot, but it basically, this is going to allow employers like sales managers or HR people just to say, oh, you completed that course, you get $30, but we'll give it to you in these points in this app. And with that app, the employees can buy a Netflix subscription, Spotify. Okay. The practical people can pay their utility bills, or they can top up their phone. And hopefully in the future we'll have a lot more merchants. So if we're successful at that first market with big companies, helping them motivate their employees, we do see a lot of options, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we just want to first be very successful with that market.
Okay. What is your forecast for 2019? Right, there's a lot of disruptive technology, disruptive strategies. Right. Mm-hmm. One day you think that wow, this is a great solution, and then the next day another competitor comes in with a much better solution. Right?
And you mean in the FinTech space or in
I would say in general.
Okay.
Right? What if you had to look into a crystal ball? Mm-hmm. What would be kind of what would you see?
Okay. Again, I'm going to take a step back before we answer this. So when I look, let's say at the FinTech space, I see incredible innovation like from companies like Revolut that are like just changing how currency. You work with currencies, they're simplifying it for customers. So I see a lot of really great companies understanding how to solve customer problems. Now transferring that to in the future, what I think is that big financial institutions more and more are going to see that they're being caught flat-footed, and I think they're going to be buying more and more startups because it's really tough for a big bank to come up with a competitor for these kind of applications because there's cultural issues, things like that. So I think what we're going to see is more and more, traditional companies buying that, which is kind of like what Walmart has been doing. So Amazon's just creating havoc in the retail space, and Walmart has been buying up these e-commerce companies like Jet and these other ones. I think that you're going to see that in other traditional spaces, and it's going to be more common for them to buy these. I think there's going to be great, the typical unicorns. I think they're just going to keep on growing. There's two things that kind of worry me. One is the privacy thing, with companies like Facebook and things like that. That hopefully they've gotten the message, but that we could have a long conversation about that. That the whole privacy thing. I think that's going to be something that's going to make people decide to use other applications like Telegram. So I see Telegram growing a lot. And the second thing that worries me is the global economic, a macro kind of thing. Like those tend to accelerate these changes. So there could be a big crisis soon, just like the one we had in 2008. So I think those two things make me think that whatever we're seeing now, it's just going to accelerate even more in the future. And there's a lot of like reconfiguring of the retail space in terms of the transportation part. So people are just making their bets on how people are going to get products to them instead of them going to get the products. Yeah. Those are the ones that come to mind. Crypto. Let me give the last one, which is I'm a big fan of crypto and instead of blockchain, I call it distributed ledger technology. But I think the first applications are going to be these simple ones that are going to be super successful, like Binance and Telegram and Bitcoin, things like that. Then we'll get to a phase that will be really incredible because it will be decentralizing a lot of infrastructure, digital infrastructure that right now is centralized with the cloud. So there's going to be another phase. That's what I think, where there's going to be a lot of applications that are going to be decentralized, and that's exciting. But that'll take some time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Would it worry you that like the big banks start buying out FinTech startups?
Yeah, not at all.
That's a way how you eliminate your competitors.
Yeah, it doesn't worry me because I think when they buy a startup, the problem hasn't been solved. They then have to make sure that those people are motivated and continue to grow, which is not a trivial matter. So I just see it as more opportunity. Like with Swap, we're not thinking of who's going to buy us. We're thinking of doing something really different. But it's great to have options. So I think that just creates more options. But I think these traditional companies recognize that they need to do something.
In terms of marketing, what do you see in the near future?
Well, that's an interesting question. So the most radical idea I have is actually about marketing. And what I think is that different platforms are going to get more and more connected so that you won't be marketing in the future, you'll be marketing less and less to people and more to software. So Amazon sees this future really well. So they're making sure that they're the lowest cost. Well, they're not always lowest, but they're trying to be the lowest cost, et cetera, because they know the world is getting more and more transparent. It's going to take a long time, but when like a Tesla car needs to fill up at a gas station, there'll be software, in my opinion, that'll start negotiating, where they should charge the car. Oh, this one's cheaper, so we'll drive a little bit more and go to that one. And it's not going to be a decision made by human beings. So just like when we use Waze, what happens? We're taking orders from software. Yeah. And while we're still in the loop, we might later on not even be in the loop. So there's a lot of things that we make decisions about that, to me, in the future we won't. So that's, to me, is going to be a big change. It's going to take at least 10 years, but towards the future, you'll be marketing towards APIs, and these transactions will be all negotiated in software.
Oh, that's interesting to hear. Thank you, Alan, for your time. It has been a great interview. I learned a lot, and I hope that you did as well. I invite you to continue this discussion in the comments section, and we look forward for our next interview. Until next time, see you soon.